The year was 1965, and the small Alabama town of Willow Creek was still caught between two worlds, one clinging to old prejudice and the other slowly learning what equality truly meant. Grace Halloway, a 31-year-old schoolteacher, lived quietly on the edge of town in a white-painted cottage surrounded by magnolia trees. Her classroom was her sanctuary, faded maps on the walls, hand-drawn charts of planets, and books with torn covers she had repaired a dozen times. Grace wasn't famous, wealthy, or outspoken, but she had a fire inside her that no law or threat could dim. She taught her students, black and white alike, to read, to think, and most dangerously in that time, to question. Every morning she walked the dusty road to the small integrated school where tension hummed like electricity. Angry parents often shouted from passing trucks, "Traitor!" or worse. Grace never shouted back. She simply lifted her chin and kept walking, clutching her lesson plans to her chest. Her father, a retired preacher, had warned her, "Child, change comes slow in this land. You'll break yourself before you break hate." But she answered softly, "Then let me be the crack that starts the break." When the local school board ordered her to stop teaching colored children, Grace refused. She kept her doors open after hours, teaching secretly in her home by candlelight. Children would sneak through the back gate after sunset, whispering as they carried their notebooks. "Miss Grace," one of them said once, "you could get hurt." She smiled faintly. "So could you." That's why we have to make it worth something. One night, the inevitable happened. Men in hoods came, their torches flaring like serpents in the dark. They pounded on her door, shouting curses, demanding she step outside. Grace's father begged her to hide, but she stood at the doorway, trembling yet unflinching. "You can burn my books," she said, "but not the words I've already given." Flames caught on the porch, smoke curled through the air. She and her students escaped through the back, clutching their few salvaged books, running toward the church down the hill. By dawn, her house was ash. The sheriff refused to investigate. "Best leave it alone, he said coldly. But the story spread, first through whispers, then through papers. Reporters from New York came to see the woman who kept teaching in ashes. Grace rebuilt her classes in the church basement, using chalkboards she carved herself from old doors. When officials threatened to revoke her license, she sent a letter to the governor that became legendary in later years. It read, "If ignorance is the law, then I choose to be unlawful." The letter was published by a local journalist sympathetic to her cause. Within months, donations arrived. Books, chalk, desks. Volunteers came from neighboring towns to help. The basement school grew into something larger, something unbreakable. The children began calling it the House of Light, but her defiance came at a cost. In 1968, as the civil rights marches reached their height, Grace was arrested during a protest in Montgomery for handing out books to children in front of a segregated library. The newspapers called her a troublemaker in pearls. She spent 6 weeks in jail. Yet even there, she taught, reading aloud from scraps of old newspapers, helping other women write letters to their families. One of those women, years later, would become a lawyer and say, "She taught me my first sentence that mattered." When Grace was finally released, she returned home to find her father's health failing. Sitting beside his bed, he whispered, "You've done what even I couldn't from the pulpit." She smiled through tears. "You taught me the words, Papa. I just spoke them louder." He passed away that night, and she buried him beneath the magnolia tree that still stood beside the ruins of her first house. In the 1970s, the world changed faster than she could have dreamed. Schools desegregated, laws shifted. Former students of hers became teachers, nurses, and community leaders. But Grace never took credit. When asked about her courage, she would always answer, "I wasn't brave. I was just too stubborn to stop believing in what was right." In her later years, Grace lived quietly in a small apartment in Birmingham, surrounded by letters from her former pupils. One rainy afternoon in 1993, she sat by her window, writing what would be her last letter. In it, she reflected, "If I had to live my life again, I'd still open the door to those children, even if the fire came again. Because the fire didn't destroy me, it revealed me." She sealed the envelope, addressed it to the children of tomorrow, and placed it on her desk. The next morning, she was found peacefully asleep in her chair, her hands resting over that final letter. At her funeral, hundreds gathered, black and white, old and young, carrying books instead of flowers. They placed them beside her coffin, one by one, until the entire altar was covered in stories. Today, the school she built, the House of Light, still stands. A plaque on its wall reads, "Dedicated to Grace Halloway, who taught us that courage is the quiet voice that says, 'Teach again tomorrow.'"